All right, Ian, we have a Patreon poll topic.
We do. CUpodcast.com.
Yes! Some things never change in the 200.
I haven't done that.
You've done that in about 20 weeks, I'll say, like 3-4 months. You haven't done that.
Patreon.com/CUpodcast. That wasn't even planned. That worked out well.
And Ian, what do you get at CUpodcast.com/Patreon?
You get writings. You get hangouts. You get the full video podcast. You get joy, laughter, and happiness. All for a few measly dollars a month.
You almost sound like you wanted to feed children in Africa by saying that. Just for a few dollars, for a cup of coffee.
We also do a poll every week.
We do a Patreon poll.
We do.
And this is the special poll. Still 3 choices. In third place, will we ever see another major console that is not Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft? 19%. In second place, movie/TV properties that should not have been made into video games.
Should not.
And the feel-good winner, Ian. What about Pat/Ian do you appreciate the most on the CU
We
podcast?
didn't discuss this.
Ian, what do you appreciate about me the most or value about me most on the CU podcast?
You're a go-getter.
Why do you say that with such malice?
I mean, that is true. You're a go-getter. You don't pussyfoot around. You will tackle the difficult topics, and you handle some of the shit that my brain does not work so well with, such as certain business dealings,
business
and
stuff
calls,
you don't like
and things
about?
like that. I don't like dealing with business. I hate business. I hate business people. I hate
You mean in the purview of the podcast business, but not like actually on the podcast?
Yeah.
You think that, okay?
Yeah, that's what I appreciate about you. You get shit done. You get it done.
I'm a shit getter dunner.
You're a shit getter dunner.
What about on the actual podcast itself? What do you appreciate? Anything about me? My hair, my dimples, anything?
I appreciate that you don't eat on the podcast anymore.
Well, intermittent fasting changed all that. Because I used to be starving.
Are you still intermittent fasting?
I've been doing it for a year and a half, and it's the greatest thing ever. Get rid of breakfast out there and try it, and go right to lunch.
Go right to lunch.
Well, I mean, don't go right to lunch, but, wait a few...
Just call your breakfast lunch.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Is that it? Wow, I almost got a minute out of you.
Almost.
On complimenting Pat.
I mean, what I appreciate? I appreciate the fact that we have a good rapport. I mean, that's why we do the podcast in the first place, is you and I can play off each other fairly well, and we can spin normally small or pointless topics into something much larger.
There's nothing pointless on the CU podcast, Ian.
Okay, unnecessary
Yes.
on the CU podcast. It's not the completely pointless podcast. It's not the CPP.
All right, what was my turn?
It's your turn.
What about Ian? Do I appreciate the most on the CU podcast? I don't understand why I had to get a little attitude before I'm about to be sincere. I love that. I love that Ian is ornery. I love that he's a curmudgeon at times. It makes for because I try to put on a happy face. A lot of times I'm in a terrible mood. Not a lot of times, but sometimes I'm tired. But you have to be a little uplifting at times. Doing a podcast. I like that Ian to me is like a small fire.
A small fire.
Every podcast that starts, Ian's a small fire, and I could throw a few leaves at it. Mm-hmm. I can throw a little bit of lighter fluid. Mm-hmm. I can needle a little bit. But the fire, when it's controlled, it's very powerful because you can focus it on topics. And Ian gets fiery. You got fiery before on the ninja topic.
Yep.
It comes out. You're like, rah! It's not as common as it used to be.
No.
It's definitely more uncommon, Ian Fire.
Uncommon fire.
But it's like a coiled fire. Now, sometimes, that's good though. Sometimes the fire gets thrown in my face. And then I have to deal with the singeing.
They always tell you
eyebrows.
not to play with lighter fluid. It can travel right back up the stream and into your hands.
But Ian is not controllable.
No.
Which is good. Because the podcast to me works because to me it's like a symbiote. It's symbiotic. in that we feed off each other, but I don't think one of us is ever totally in control on the podcast.
I appreciate that Pat holds the kite string and can kind of bring the topic back down to reality sometimes if need be.
Do you fly away sometimes?
I fly away all the time.
Well, speaking of the Quaker Oats thing, that was a good fly away.
That was a good fly away. But someone still needs to hold on to the kite string.
Structure. You need to have the structure.
Got to make me do the tricks and the dives.
But you can go towards the sun, though, and you're going to fly towards the sun.
I'm a stunt kite.
You're a stunt kite?
Yes.
I never owned it. Come on, Dad. Sorry. I always wanted a stunt kite. Anyway. Okay, that's what I appreciate about Ian. And then Ian usually doesn't sugarcoat, which is good. I don't sugarcoat. I was accused of sugarcoating at one point in the podcast. I think you told me, Ian. Or something like, you told me one time, I'll never forget this, you said someone accused you of doing my dirty work. You said it to me about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was just like, I don't know. I say a lot of things that people come after me for, and I'm usually the one people come after. You know.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, it was a little different, though, too.
Well, when Ian was on the podcast and PewDiePie was doing stupid things, I got a ton of heat for that.
He's always
when I was
doing
honest.
stupid things.
But no, Ian doesn't do my dirty work. I get my own hands dirty. I think sometimes Ian... what's funny is that when the fire of Ian sometimes holds back when I least expect it. When I don't expect, I want it to go forward, and it kind of holds back. You can't predetermine what happens to the fire.
I can't control it myself.
Sometimes it goes off. Sometimes it flames in my face. It's happened a handful of times in the podcast, where Ian wanted to punch me for some reason. But that's what I appreciate about it, because otherwise it wouldn't work. I don't want to feel like someone can't say something on the podcast. You know, some of the best times on the podcast where me and Ian we scrap really on topics, and usually 99% of the time it stays within the podcast. There's only been a small amount of times where it unfortunately bled out of the podcast, but most of the times it stays, you know, at this nice half circle table.
Yes,
that I have here. So, all right, that's what I like about Ian.